Welcome to another episode of Full Build Friday, where I try to build a character from a comic, game, or similar source using the baseline rules of Pathfinder Second Edition and the Path Builder app. We leave behind the uncharted waters of Assassin's Creed for more familiar sailing in the sea of characters from League of Legends. This week's build features the extra-large Rek'Sai herself, Rek'Sai the Void Burrower. You're probably thinking, hey, crazy, how in the world are you going to build this mighty monstrous mama? Well, I'll get right into that by establishing some build goals. Rek'Sai is a Void champion who serves as a diver, intended to blitz down a single enemy and force them to deal with her presence. When it comes to her actual abilities, there are some differences depending on the state that she is presently in. Her Fury of the Rek'Sai passive causes her attacks to generate Fury, which she consumes when burrowed to heal herself. While unburrowed, her first basic ability is Queen's Wrath, which empowers her next 3 attacks to deal additional damage and hit surrounding enemies. Burrow lets her dive underground, reducing her sight, but compensating her with increased speed and tremor sense. Her final ability while above ground is Furious Bite, which deals heavy damage that becomes true damage if her Fury is full. Then, while she is burrowed, she has Praise Seeker to launch a void bolt that detonates upon impact with an enemy. She can obviously unburrow, which damages, knocks up, and slows nearby enemies, and also Tunnel, prompting her to dash in a target direction and leave a tunnel behind that she can travel through. Either way, her ultimate stays the same. Void Rush. Passively, it marks enemies when she damages them. She can then activate it to disappear before pouncing on a marked enemy, dealing higher damage based on their missing health. Over in Legends of Runeterra, she is a Lurker champion who empowers Lurker allies that gains Overwhelm once leveled and stops diving back into your deck. There's not a lot of lore to Rek'Sai. While she originates from the Void, she has dwelled in the desert realm of Shurima for centuries. She's the queen of the Rek'Sai, savage void beasts that tunnel beneath the sands and are feared throughout the region, but not as much as their ruler, Rek'Sai. That's quite a bit to cover, so let's dive into the dunes and discover our desert-dwelling danger. A major obstacle in building Rek'Sai is her appearance, but I think I've found something that works, at least partially. This build uses the Nagaji ancestry with the Sacred Heritage in an attempt to get a body type at least vaguely similar to her own. From her ancestry feats, she takes up Cold-Minded to represent the very alien understanding she has of the world and the emotions giving her origin in the Void. I do want to mention that this will not be the only way we try to emulate Rek'Sai's form, but at least gives us a starting shape. The creatures of the Void are often victims of base instincts, but most are at least capable of speech. Except for Rek'Sai. For that simplistic savagery, she selects the feral child background, which makes her trained in nature and survival, and gives her the Forager's skill feat, so that she can feed her Rek'Sai minions. It also gives her an imprecise sense of scent and dark vision, since her ancestry already granted her low light vision. For her class, Rek'Sai fights solely with her claws and jaws, which leads into her using the Monk class. Right away, the rapidity of attacks that she can achieve with Flurry of Blows helps the quick strikes of her Queen's Wrath, though to get the extra damage associated with it, I had her take Key Strike as her first level class feat. I was honestly debating between this and Tiger Stance to give her some more claws to really shred into her opponents, and I do think that both work, option-wise. However, getting Key Strike now plays into an aspect I have down the line. She doesn't get a ton of skills, but will become trained in Acrobatics, Athletics, Stealth, and then the most questionable but necessary skill, Cave Worm Lore. This is going to be a stand-in for Rek'Sai lore or similar aspects, though things like this could always be reflavored in either direction that you would like. As fast as Rek'Sai is, she is a burly brawler of a beast, befitting the building of brawn, though dexterity and constitution are equally important secondary stats for her, at least to start with. Regrettably, going feral child means that Rek'Sai is missing a boost, so her AC is a little lacking to start, and is only marginally compensated by the monk starting as an expert in unarmored defense. This is another build that makes serious use of an archetype, which starts at 2nd level with the Worm Collar Dedication. Just like it says, this archetype is all about emulating the cave worms, which aside from size, I think are pretty similar to the Rek'Sai. Though given that League Rek'Sai doesn't have any innate tenacity, the Shake It Off ability it provides doesn't quite mesh with her. She does grab Quick Jump as her skill feat based on the way she bounds upon her enemies during Void Rush. The Monk already gets incredible movement starting at 3rd level here, but she'll also take Fleet as her general feat to become even faster, as per the increased movement speed she has when burrowed. Her first skill increase goes to Athletics, making her an expert in it. By 4th level, Rek'Sai can take Worm Skin, which almost fixes her AC issue and still puts her ahead of others thanks to her expertise in it. I picked Bludgeoning Resistance as it seemed to make the most sense with her plates, while also being the most useful, but given the heat of her home, I could understand going Fire Resistance as well. While that covers the mechanics of it, I think this is an important feat to give Rek'Sai her unique appearance. Then, she takes Powerful Leap as her skill feat, for similar reasons as Quick Jump when she got her previous skill feat. 5th level grants her an Ancestry feat, which will be Water Nagaji almost solely as a reference to her pool party skin, which turns her into a shark. This feat doesn't quite do that, but it does give her a swim speed and the breath control general feat. She increases her survival to expert to better hunt prey in the sweeping sands of Shurima, and to also survive his harshness. As a quick note, she does finally increase her dexterity to +3 at this level, so that she's getting the most use out of her worm skin. On the topic of worms, 6th level gives her Worm Sense, which is honestly minor, but essential. She already has Dark Vision, but this more importantly grants Tremor Sense at an admittedly short range, which she will use to represent her senses while burrowed. As an XP of Egypt, Shurima is riddled with ruins, which leads to this build taking Terrain Stalker for Rubble as her skill feat at this level. Rek'Sai can be a bit of a bruiser, which leads to her taking Toughness as her general feat at 7th level. She also becomes a master in athletics with her skill increase. Then, as a monk, she starts on her first path to perfection. Given her favorite environment, size within League, and bruiser nature, I went with increasing her fortitude to master proficiency. At 8th level, Rek'Sai picks up Ki Blast to mimic the effects of her Prey Seeker, being a ranged AoE effect, though in this case it's a cone rather than a burst at the end of a line. For her skill feat, she takes up Terrain Expertise for the desert, which she has dwelled in long enough to become storied throughout the area. For her 9th level Ancestry feat, I kind of like Serpent Coil Slam as a reverse of her Unburrow, where instead of knocking enemies up, she knocks flying enemies down to the ground and keeps them earthbound, at least briefly. With this level skill increase, she gets up to Master Proficiency in her Survival skill. Tunnel as her 10th level class feat grants her a burrow speed, letting her use both her burrow and tunnel abilities. Now, I will admit this is at a very slow speed, and there was part of me that hoped incredible movement from the monk would apply to it, but that specifically only applies to land speed. I understand some of you will find these inclusions to be too paltry. Only 10 feet of burrow, only 10 feet of tremor sense right now, but that will get up to only 15 feet. And I can agree with that, I can see where you're coming from. But this build gets closer than I ever thought I could get to Rek'Sai, and I just really wanted to share that with you. Now, given her origins from the Void, Rek'Sai takes the Planar Survival skill feat to aid her in subsisting upon the world of Runeterra. An intelligence increase also makes her trained in Intimidation at this level. 11th level grants her the Fast Recovery general feat as an acknowledgement of the healing that she gets from her Fury of the Xerxai passive, though this is admittedly a tiny bit slower. She'll start increasing her Intimidation to Expert, and then her second path to Perfection leads her to mastering her reflex saves. For her 12th level class feat, she takes Call Worm Spirit, which references both her command of the Xerxai and also works for her Unburrow ability, as it's an area effect that deals damage and offers some lockdown if the enemies fail their save against it. Now, I could see skipping it because it feels weird for her, in which case I would grab Tiger Stance for the reasons mentioned earlier, or slip in a Flying Kick. Then, since our sand slithering superstar doesn't actually talk, she'll take Intimidating Glare as her skill feat to get some use off of the intimidation that she's already started increasing. In part due to a lack of other options, Rek'Sai takes Pit of Snakes as her 13th level Ancestry feat for similar reasons as taking Call Worm Spirit. Alternatively, you could build off of Water Nagaji and take Serpentine Swimmer to increase her swim speed. A skill increase to Intimidation makes her a master in menacing her meals to be. Level 14 is a big one because it gives her access to Worm Form. This is the real reason behind going the Wormcaller archetype, as this makes her a huge purple worm, which feels like a fantastic way to represent how this Ravenous Ravager actually appears in the realm of Runeterra. Then, since our queen of creeping crawling critters kinda lacks in charisma, she takes intimidating prowess as her skill feat to get a bonus based on her strength instead. At level 15 she grabs incredible initiative to help her get a jump on her prey, and then she increases her athletics to legendary, and with her final path to perfection, does the same for her fortitude save. She uses Flying Kick as her 16th level class feat to mimic the great big jump she performs as part of her Void Rush. Further helping the distance of this legendary leap, not that it needs it, is the Cloud Jump skill feat, which lets her triple the distance that she can long jump, a range which gets absolutely nuts. Neither of the 17th level ancestry feats really suit Rek'Sai, but Prismatic Scales plays a bit more into the bruiser that she's sometimes built as, while Breath of Calamity doesn't really resemble anything I know her to ever do. This time around, she becomes a legend in her survival skill with this level's increase. For her 18th level class feat, Shattering Strike can bypass the resistance of her enemies, which matches surprisingly nicely with the true damage dealt by a fully enraged Furious Bite. As to her skill feat, Legendary Survivalist denies any danger that the dryness of the desert might present her with. I will admit that it is a little silly as a concept, but at 19th level, Rek'Sai can pick up the pace as her general feat so that she can hasten her helpers in a hunt, urging them faster after fleeing prey. Her final skill increase makes her a master in intimidation. For the last level of our looming legend, we look to Golden Body as the class feat, which grants our Violent Violet Voidling fast healing, which is important to reference the healing achieved by her Fury of the Rek'Sai passive, though it does also add deadly to her unarmed strikes as a cherry on top. As for her skill feat, she can take Battle Cry to make use out of her Intimidation Mastery, and let her strike terror in her enemies with the echoes of her approaching cries. In a free archetype game, Rek'Sai is mostly just going to have room to take more monk feats, such as Tiger Stance, and pick up some of them earlier. She could go whole hog into Wormcaller, but I could also understand a Barbarian dedication. She does have Fury as a passive, and I think that plays into it nicely, while also giving her some extra punch when it comes to smacking enemies around. But, some way, somehow, we have built Rek'Sai the Void Burrower in Pathfinder Second Edition. However, if you're still doubting, let's take a moment to review. Rek'Sai is a sacred Nagaji monk with the feral child background to represent her being a savage beast from the void. Ironically, she uses her capstone feat Golden Body to represent the healing provided by her Fury of the Rek'Sai passive, though she can also rely upon fast recovery. She can make a series of attacks that deal extra damage with Flurry of Blows and Key Strike for her Queen's Wrath, but lacks the ability to hit multiple targets aside from just targeting different enemies. By exploring the Wormcaller dedication, Rek'Sai covers Burrow with her Tunnel feat for a Burrow speed, and Worm Sense for her Tremor Sense. To mimic the effects of the true damage dealt by her Furious Bite, she uses Shattering Strike, which allows her to bypass resistances of enemies that she attacks. For her burrowed abilities, she relies on Ki Blast to mimic the effects of her Prey Seeker, though this launches a cone rather than an exploding bolt. You can reflavor Callworm Spirit to serve as her Unburrow, but could also simply take advantage of her Athletics skill and the maneuvers associated with it. Meanwhile, Tunnel is just her using her Burrow speed. This leaves her Void Rush Ultimate, which is achieved through the Flying Kick feat, allowing her to launch herself at an enemy and make a strike with its range enhanced by her own movement and Cloud Jump. Her investment in survival and its related feats help her in the harsh habitat of her homelands, while she at least has pick up the pace to lead her Rek'Sai minions in the hunt. This volatile and very violent voidling violently invades various villages, verily ventilating vectors with a volley of vicious violations. You can always check out the blog for a breakdown that includes item suggestions and a fuller exploration of the build's use in a free archetype game. That, along with the Monster Monday Twitter and Discord, are linked in the description below. Thanks for watching, and have a fantastic Friday.